My dream has always been to have a simple, minimal text editor, yet complete with all the essential tools to properly edit text documents. Sometimes I use a mouse pad, other times simply the terminal to quickly write down my thoughts and save them as TXT files. But when it comes to more structured documents, the situation on Linux gets complicated. Today I want to tell you a particular story, a story of death and resurrection in the world of free software. A story that no one seems to have noticed, but one that deserves to be told. A story that makes us reflect on what progress really means in software. For documents in general, the alternatives on Linux are essentially two: LibreOffice and OnlyOffice. LibreOffice, supported by the Document Foundation, is in fact the standard Office suite on almost all Linux distributions. Its interface is massive, very similar to that of Microsoft Word, which it precisely tries to replace on Linux. And here emerges a general problem with all Office suites. They try to imitate their main competitor to make the transition painless for users who no longer have to use Microsoft Office. By now, Office is a worldwide standard, almost an obsession among average users, especially on Windows. If there's no Office, for many the operating system simply isn't usable. This is the reality we have to deal with. But you know what's curious? LibreOffice Writer, when you open it, loads more than 100 megabytes of libraries just to show you a blank page. Think about it, 100 megabytes for a blank page. In the early 2000s, with that memory, you could run a complete operating system. And I'm not exaggerating. OnlyOffice has tried to take a different approach, but not an unpredictable one. It has tried to have a simpler, cleaner interface with tab navigation that I find brilliant and extremely useful. The compatibility with Microsoft Office files is excellent, probably the best in the Linux environment. However, it natively supports the Microsoft format at the expense of ODF, and this ideologically is a red flag for me. I still appreciate the program, I admit it, but this choice leaves me perplexed. It's as if we're saying, okay, we've lost. Let's follow the proprietary standard. Other attempts on Linux have been a bit lopsided. The Qt-based suite, first Office and then Calligra, aimed precisely at this, escaping the word interface schema and looking beyond. Calligra had interesting ideas, like deep integration with Krita for graphics, but unfortunately it never took off and remains to this day still an abomination in terms of usability and stability. The last stable version dates back months ago, but who really uses it? On the other hand, new projects are emerging, new editors like Letters, an editor born within GNOME, which promises simplicity and modernity. Unfortunately, I can't install it since it's only distributed through Flatpak. Well, you all already know the absurdity of this thing and my opinion about it. Well, now you'll understand where I'm going with this. So, wandering around in a moment of half relaxation, I remembered AbiWord, and I said to myself, does it still exist? And above all, is it on Void Linux? Well, I just had to launch XBPS to see AbiWord installed on my distribution. But what surprised me even more, beyond the dive into the early 2000s, the clean interface, the lightness, the mere 70 megabytes to open and edit a document, is the fact that AbiWord has been resurrected and no one has noticed. 70 megabytes. Let me repeat, 70 megabytes of RAM for a complete and functional word processor in 2025, when your browser is probably using 2 gigabytes just to keep 3 tabs open. Yes, because for more than a decade, AbiWord had practically disappeared. There were no releases, the site had slowly fallen into oblivion, and in recent years it was even inaccessible. And instead now, to my surprise, I see that it has gotten a totally new look, that there's some movement on the project page, and that a version was even released in April 2024. But I wonder, why in the general silence of everyone? This is fantastic news. A historic project coming back to life should make the news, shouldn't it? I love this program. I remember it was born in 1998, launched by AbiSource, initially backed by SourceGear Corporation. AbiWord emerged with an ambitious goal to create a free, open-source, and cross-platform word processor that could serve as a viable alternative to commercial giants like Microsoft Word. And you know what was one of AbiWord's most innovative features at the time? It was one of the first word processors to have real-time collaboration. Yes, you heard that right. In the 2000s, when Google Docs was still a distant dream, AbiWord already allowed collaborative document editing through a direct connection. It was called AbiCollab and used a peer-to-peer system. It was at least 5 years ahead of its time. It quickly found a dedicated following within the Linux community, praised for its efficiency, especially on less powerful hardware. And here's another curiosity. AbiWord was so lightweight that it was included in OLPC, the One Laptop Per Child project. Those little green laptops destined for children in developing countries, well, they ran AbiWord. Because when you have 256 megabytes of total RAM, you can't afford LibreOffice. Its availability wasn't limited to Linux. There were versions for Windows, macOS, BOS, QNX, and other systems, demonstrating its commitment to broad accessibility. The Windows version was particularly popular in schools because you could install it on old computers that couldn't handle Microsoft Office. After a short time, the company that had supported it abandoned the project, which entered the GNOME sphere. In the early 2000s, AbiWord was part of the GNOME Office project, which included, among others, events for PDFs and Inkscape for vector graphics. Not small programs, in other words. An interesting technical detail. AbiWord was one of the first programs to extensively use GTK Plus for the interface, and its text rendering engine was considered excellent. It supported Unicode when many other programs still struggled with accented characters. It supported bidirectional rendering for languages written from right to left, stuff that we take for granted today, but which at the time was revolutionary. Then, slowly but gradually, the program faded away. The focus on it faded, the releases stopped. Little by little, in the general silence, it slipped into oblivion, almost to the point of death. The last version before the silence was 3.0 in 2013, then nothing. But it hasn't died at all, it seems. The site is back online with a brand new design. The Git page shows decent signs of activity, okay, only from a couple of developers, and a version was even released in July 2024. So is AbiWord back? Well, yes and no, because there aren't even release notes on the site. They seem more like attempts to resuscitate it. Perhaps our renewed interest could push and incentivize a more active resumption of its development. I even took the trouble to write to its maintainer, at least one of them, but I still haven't received a response. I'd be curious to know what drove them to bring the project back to life after all these years. What are the plans? Is there a roadmap? Anyway, I invite everyone to rediscover this little gem, to take a look at it, because its archaic simplicity is not at all out of place in a historical moment like this. Think about it. We live in an era where to open a text document, you need gigabytes equal to the number of words we want to write. Okay, it's a bit of an exaggerated metaphor, but by now we're facing pachyderms. Pachyderms in resource usage and pachyderms in interfaces, which are poorly designed, which scream while you use them. Electron has ruined everything. There, I said it. Applications that are essentially websites packaged in a browser. Each app carries with it the entire Chromium engine. It's pure madness. And the beauty is that we pass it off as progress because this way developers can write code once for all platforms. AbiWord instead, you look at it, you start using it, and you realize it has everything you need. Really everything. Text formatting? It's there. Tables? They're there. Images? Supported. PDF export? Obviously. Plugins to extend functionality? Present. Multilingual spell checking? It works. Import and export of Microsoft formats? Surprisingly good. You're not missing anything to write a decent document, format it, save it in various formats, and it does it using a fraction of the resources that any modern alternative would use. There's an important lesson here. New doesn't always mean better. Sometimes we already have the solution, but we're too busy chasing the latest trendy technology to notice it. So I ask myself, do we really need another text editor written in Electron that takes up a gigabyte of RAM? Or perhaps what we already have is sufficient? Maybe a refresh, the addition and cleaning up of some parts couldn't make it a modern program, usable every day? Actually, excuse me, it already is. It's already usable every day. It's light, fast, complete. And now it's even come back to life, silently, without fanfare, without marketing campaigns. The question is, when will we stop chasing useless features and go back to appreciating what really works? When will we stop measuring the value of software by the number of features and start measuring it by its efficiency and real utility? AbiWord is proof that sometimes the past still has much to teach us about the future of software. It's proof that minimalism and completeness are not opposites but can coexist. It's proof that 70 megabytes can be enough if the code is well written. Take a look at it, rediscover it, and maybe the next time you need to write a document, ask yourself if you really need that Mastodon suite or if a simple, fast, and efficient program can't do the same job. You might surprise yourself. See you in the next video, and may Linux be with you.